Hello, my name is Robin Anderson, and it's a great pleasure to join you here at the World Food Prize Foundation. The word food is right in the name of the prize, and nothing can be more important than the nutrition we get out of that food. This panel and roundtable today is full of eminent experts, people right from the start of the food system, all the way through to the experts that lead the policy and the development of our nutritional systems. Today, we're going to explore what we need to do to create more action around nutrition. And with this panel, I'm pleased to say that we have all of their biographies on the Whova immediately below. And we'll begin to explore with each of them what are some of the key action items. And first, I'd like to call on Naoko Yamamoto, who is with the World Health Organization. She's going to provide a bit of a scene setting for us about just how much urgency exists on the question of nutrition in the world today. Naoko.
Thank you very much, Robin. And as a chair of the UN Nutrition and as a member of the WHO, I'm very pleased to join here today. And I would like to share a few thoughts to frame the discussion. We are the UN One Voice for Nutrition, bringing together all UN agencies working on nutrition. We combine many strengths and the capacity of the several sectors and actors and make them work for nutrition by ensuring that more people can access and consume safer and healthier food. This could be a working definition of nutrition-sensitive food systems. This year, 2021, is a critical year for food systems. The UN member states and broad stakeholders of the Committee of World Food Security, CFS, adopted guidelines of the food system and nutrition. And also, we saw unparalleled movement towards the Food Systems Summit that led the coalition for healthier diets or broader school meal programs and so on. COVID-19 has been a wake-up call. The pandemic that started as a health problem showed how fragile and interconnected food and health systems are. Food systems were affected by the measures implemented to slow down the spread of the virus, like including lockdown and the restriction of transportation. And long and complex supply lines are vulnerable, particularly for the perishable foods such as fruits, vegetables, and fish. This is why we had to rethink and strengthen local production. The most vulnerable groups were hit harder. If we don't take urgent action, in the coming 3 years, almost 300,000 more children will die because of malnutrition. We need to approach to the connectivity between land, water, and aquatic systems, and nutrition and health. We cannot treat them in isolation, but that we have to move from the narrative to action. Otherwise, reducing malnutrition in all its forms will remain an elusive goal. Let me please end with the telling example of the combined homestead ponds and gardens in Bangladesh. They combine the production of small nutritious fish species with vegetable production in their garden and pond. This contributed to the reducing of malnutrition. I'm looking forward to discuss with the distinguished panel how we can make our food system nutrition sensitive and what action we can take. I thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Yamamoto. We really appreciate everything that World Health Organization has been doing to highlight these issues. And indeed, the situation is very grave. I'd like now to call on the next segment of our panel. And on this conversation, we'll have Sean Baker, Chief Nutritionist from USAID, Dr. Ratanlal, an eminent immediate past winner of the World Food Prize and one of the world's leading experts on soil, Dr. Shankuntala Tilsted, of course, this year's prize winner, who works in the area of aquatic foods, and Patience Kuku, who is a farmer from Nigeria, who is a member of the Global Farmer Network and an active participant in her own community about creative solutions to increase food security. In this segment, Sean, I'd like to turn to you first to talk a little bit about this question of the urgency. Naoko spoke to that very compellingly. What do you think the state of food and nutrition really is, and in particular for mothers and children these days?
Thank you so much, Robin, and it's a pleasure to go after Dr. Yamamoto. As she's laid out, the situation is really critical, and I think the magical ingredient is really the political will to transform our food systems so they are delivering safe, affordable, nutritious food. And I will hearken back to some of the highlights of the UN Food System Summit of when I heard, and I'll just take two examples, one from West Africa and one from here at home, when you had the president of Ghana making deeply informed, evidence-based, actionable commitments to how to transform food systems and mainstream nutrition into the health system. This is exactly the level of political leadership. And then here at home, having President Biden at the UN General Assembly commit to transforming food systems at home and abroad to deliver safe, affordable, nutritious food. And what do you need to do to get that level of political will? First, it's really that a broad set of actors understand the critical nature of good nutrition. 45% of under 5 deaths are attributable to undernutrition. And for those kids who survive malnutrition, we know we fundamentally deprive them of their optimal physical and cognitive development. And it's also striking just how badly the food system is failing us. I think, and Dr. Tilstead, I will steal a bit your words from the wisdom you shared with me earlier in the week. The food system may currently be feeding the planet, but it's certainly not nourishing the planet. Even before the pandemic, 3 million people could not afford a healthy diet. Analysis from the International Policy Research Institute indicate that that may increase by about 267 million because of the pandemic. As Dr. Yamamoto has said, the projections of the impact on malnutrition for kids is frightening. About 13.6 million children suffering wasting, the most deadly form of malnutrition. And if you look directly at infants and young kids in low and middle income countries in that critical period between 6 months and 23 months, when breast milk alone is not enough, you need nutritious food, less than 18% of infants and young children are getting a minimum acceptable diet. And the cost of those foods is one of the key reasons. Obviously, there are behavioral reasons, but the cost can be so out of reach. And to give an illustration of that, in Niger, if an egg in calorie equivalents is 23.3 times more expensive than that similar calorie equivalent in staples. Now, not a perfect comparison, but to give you an example of just how unaffordable nutritious foods can be. But we have solutions, and this is what we need to get the political will, not behind the problem, but behind the solutions, such as quickly making sure we're optimizing the impacts of large-scale food fortification to ensure security of essential vitamins and minerals, making sure we're supporting small and medium enterprises to be able to produce nutritious foods because they're such a huge part of the interface with the consumers and the food system, mainstreaming breeding for nutrient traits in our breeding systems, more fundamentally thinking, how do we transform our food system to say, delivering nourishing food is the prime directive, and how do we build back the whole system that's at the heart? And then all of that, point number 5, needs to be driven by very sound evidence. I think every partner country are facing challenges, and how do we work hand in hand that those challenges are addressed with the best evidence-based solution? Back over to you, Robin. Thanks so much.
Wow, the numbers are so compelling, and the reference to how do we start, and let's pivot to the start of that system. If we go over to our main stage, Dr. Lal, and as a past laureate, your life's work has been about soils. How does the soils element relate to this nutrition discussion?
Oh, thank you very much. It's a really great pleasure to join this panel, and I really appreciate your question. It's estimated that globally, more than 2 billion people are malnourished. Compared, for example, the estimate of 820 million people who are undernourished, not enough calories, malnourished, not enough protein, micronutrients, vitamins. That's a very serious problem. I attribute widespread malnourishment to very widespread soil degradation. Indeed, soil degradation is the cause of human malnourishment. Wherever soils are degraded, that's where the population dependent upon the food grown on that soil also have malnourishment. I want to give you an example specifically. There are 17 micronutrients that are essential for human health. And although I hear quite a lot about biofortification, golden rice is a very good example. Sweet potato is an excellent example of vitamin A, and other biofortification can definitely help. But these micronutrients have to come from somewhere. This is very important part to recognize if we have to address the problem. The miracle varieties can only do miracle if they are grown in a soil with optimal availability of water and nutrients, especially micronutrients. Miracle varieties cannot withdraw nutrients if they do not exist. This is a very important concept to understand. Therefore, we can do something about it. Other very important concept is that soil is no different than a bank account. In a bank account, you cannot withdraw more than what you put into it. Especially in the last decade or so, there has been no interest on it, whatever you put in the bank. So you cannot withdraw more. I mean, I know that I put a check which was more than what was an amount, and I got the fine, tremendous fine. Soil also punishes you when you draw more than what you put into it. Soil does not forget it. And a negative nutrient budget creates very serious problems of nutrient imbalance. When the nutrient imbalance happens, some nutrients are more than the other, and that ratio, which is optimum, is not there. The food grown on unbalanced nutrition concentration of important nutrients in soil produces food which is deficit in micronutrients. And one thing I must say, that good food is a good medicine. When the food is good, medicine is of no need. When food is poor, medicine is of no use. Medicine does not work when people are malnourished, and a healthy soil is the basis. Lawrence may remember I discussed with him one of my concerns at the UN Food System Summit, where the focus was on human-animal nexus, health nexus. And I fully agree. The human-animal health is connected, absolutely correct. There are diseases which are spread from animal to human, absolutely correct. But please understand this one very simple part. In nature, when we try to lift anything, we find it's hitched to everything else. And the typical example of it being hitched to everything else is the following. The health of soil, plants, animal, people, environment, and the planet is one and indivisible. And when the health of soil goes down because of land misuse and mismanagement, it has a cascading effect on the health of everything else. This is what I was trying to correct in UN Food System Summit. Yes, human-animal health is very interconnected, but please look at a bigger picture if you want to solve the undernourishment problem widely spread in the world. It began with restoration of the soil health. One other thing, which I think it's going to look like preaching, but it's very important to say it. The fire that burns in the pit of an empty stomach its ferocity, its severity can only be quenched by the divine powers in a loaf of bread made from grains grown on a healthy soil. That's the best medicine to improve human health. If we do not remember this, unfortunately, we'll be discussing the same problem in 2030. Thank you.
So compelling. Thank you so much, Dr. Lal. This is truly a One Health approach, and it does start with the soil, and equally it starts with our oceans. Shankuntala, you are the World Food Prize laureate this year from World Fish, their head of nutrition and public health. How does this message about our soils equally apply to our oceans?
Thank you so much, and I'm happy to be here. Very often we look at land and food systems, and we forget all about water systems. But now the CGIAR is trying to rectify this with a mission and a vision on food, land, and water systems. So we must recognize the synergies between land and water systems and be very mindful that the actions we take on land affects those in the water systems and vice versa. I work a lot in Asia and on the Asia Mecca deltas, such as the Megan Delta and the Irrawaddy Delta. And this area is home to 360 million people, and many are poor and vulnerable. And if we do not take into consideration the changes that are happening in these deltas with climate change, then we are going to miss out on what we have set to do in the UN Food System Summit. Changes in the land and in the water systems, the aquatic systems, must be managed and must be developed, or else it would affect food and nutrition security. It would affect livelihoods and income of all the people who depend on the Delta. Secondly, we must prioritize these people. We must not just think about the solutions that deal with the food or the environment, but also have a people-centered approach. Nutrition-sensitive solutions must be built, and the multiple benefits that they have on food and nutrition security, livelihoods, income, and social justice must be taken into consideration. And it must impact, because these impact people at scale and are intergenerational. And let us consider the diversity of systems. We have not been good at doing this. And in considering the diversity of systems, we must take into consideration the aquatic foods that make up the diversity of the systems. Just having small amounts of these aquatic foods on the plate will have great effects on nutrition and health of the people. So it's very important that we integrate aquatic foods within the systems, within the water-based systems and the land-based systems. And we must build in the innovations and solutions for this. To do so, we must have the commitment for investments. Until now, the investments that we have has been on land systems, and we must now look towards the investments that we need within food, land, and water systems. And we must shift the agenda so that much more, I'm not saying that we must have the same pie of investments. We need to grow the pie of investments, and the slice that we have for aquatic foods must be larger. Thank you.
Indeed, we need to nourish the systems that we participate in. Thank you so much, and congratulations for your award. We'll come back on a few of these points, but I'd like to bring in Patience Kuku, who is a farmer in Nigeria. And Patience has a frontline experience of some of these issues that we've talked about, the challenges that Sean raised of nutrition-sensitive agriculture and how to really make sure that we're nourishing people right from the start. And she, on her own farm, has to deal with all those soil issues that Dr. Lal was speaking about. Patience, what do you think we need to do to make sure that we can get those diverse diets that we really need for people on the ground?
Thank you, Robin. I'm really honored to be here today, and thank you, World Food Pride Foundation. I think that for me, my task today is just basically speaking after such distinguished speakers to bring a real face to the challenges that do really exist in where I live, which is Nigeria, and as a farmer also, and as a woman. I think that if we understand the reality truly, that like it was clearly stated in the keynotes by the keynote speaker at CFS 49, that 3 billion people cannot afford nutritious food, period. And the reality is in my country, minimum wage is $79 a month. And so what needs to be done? If I can't afford to eat nutritious food and I need it to be healthy, then it then becomes imperative that every tool in the box has to be deployed. So as a farmer, I want to be able to grow on nutritious and productive soil, but then that's also a challenge because I don't have access to all the things that I need. So what do we need to do? They have highlighted them. Biofortification. If I cannot afford to eat fruits and vegetables to be able to get vitamins, can I eat my staple food and get iron or whatever nutrients else I need in that food? Funding for these programs have also been highlighted. So those technologies do exist. But then when we come back to what Sean said about the urgency, what I would like to urge on the path coming out of the UN Food Systems Summit is that when we talk about urgency, we must accept every tool that is available. So as we quickly were able to develop vaccines for COVID-19, we need to be able to use technologies that are available, whatever they are, to be able to produce these biofortified foods or to improve our soils, whatever we need to do, there's an urgency there. Then the second point that I'd like to, countries, like I will speak from an African perspective as a farmer and also an African, we have indigenous foods that are very nutritious. However, because they are not staples, there's a lot of funding, not a lot of funding goes to those, improving those foods. I'll give you an example, fluted pumpkins. If the fluted pumpkin, high in iron, moringa is superfood, all African foods. However, Africans are not eating them or relying on them so much. And so when we speak of what Nyoko spoke to about homestead gardens, how do we put the entire process in place where we can improve the breeding of the indigenous foods, the processing and the storage, so that people can be able to get these and easily accessible and then be able to eat nutritious foods and be able to stay alive. The urgency truly is how do we get people to stay alive? Production is low in these same countries where the people cannot afford food and the money is not there to buy food. What can we do very quickly? We can make sure that we are moving with urgency in improving the production of these foods so that people can eat and stay alive. Thank you.
Thank you, Patience. And I know on your own farms, you grow a great diversity of products, and exciting those examples of local foods or indigenous foods that can make up a diverse diet is really key to both success in farming and also in achieving the nutritional outcomes we want and the environmental outcomes we want. And we can see those threads pulling through this conversation. I'd like to bring in some more producers into the conversation. We have Jennifer Sorensen, who's the communications director from Iowa Select Farms, who's active in the pork sector in particular. We have Eiji Kawamura, who's here, who is himself the chair of the Solutions for the Land, a horticultural producer, a farmer in California, and working on urban agriculture solutions as well. And Gina Gutierrez from Mexico, who is a dairy farmer, an incredible spokesperson for young farmers around the world, and very active in her local cooperatives. So we have a great diversity from Patience all the way through to Gina of a fantastic set of farmers who are engaged in this production. And I'd like to not just say farmers, I'd like to include fishers and bring Shakuntala into this conversation as well. Shakuntala, when you think about what we need to do, to get that diverse diet built out? You alluded to this in some of your early remarks. What are some of the programs that can get those aquatic foods into people's hands?
Well, for me, that's easy because we have systems now. We have food systems. However, we know that these food systems are not delivering. They are not delivering on food and nutrition security. They are not delivering on income, on livelihoods, and they are not delivering on the health of our planet. If we would bring in, from where I stand and the work that I do and represent, if we would bring in aquatic food systems where over 3.3 billion people depend on aquatic foods for healthy diets, for nutritious diets, and for having parts of aquatic food, diverse aquatic foods on their plate, then we have increase the opportunity of getting to our solutions and getting to where we want to go. Also, if we would look at where we were with the Food System Summit, we've reached far with the Food System Summit in getting this shift just from land and food systems to food, land, and water systems. And we saw, for example, from the science group of the UN Food System Summit that 7 priorities were recommended, one of these being on aquatic foods. So where we stand today, we have gotten some evidence. The UN Nutrition Discussion Paper on the role of aquatic foods and sustainable healthy diets came up with very specific recommendations as to how we can use aquatic foods to have this diversity of the diets and to increase food, to improve food and nutrition security. We have also had a collaboration with Stanford University and Stockholm Resilience Center on Blue Foods assessment across the board of the multiple benefits of aquatic foods. So we have the evidence. We know where we can go. We have been pointed towards solutions within the UN food systems, for example, school feeding programs. So let us use the aquatic foods within these solutions to get the best benefits that we can.
Great to mention the school feeding as well. As the first time it's come up so far. You were talking about diverse proteins from aquatic foods. I know Patience grows pulses on her farm. Jennifer, can we bring you in to talk a little bit about the role of diverse proteins?
Absolutely. Such an honor to be here. You know, there's no lack of evidence showing the importance of animal protein in helping prevent childhood hunger and malnutrition. Pork is the most widely eaten meat on the globe. The National Pork Board, in fact, shows that a 3-ounce serving of pork provides 5% iron, a necessary mineral we know is needed for that growth and development, has less than 5 grams of fat, is naturally low in sodium, and just packed with protein. And, you know, with that nutritionally packed cut of meat with both micro and macronutrients and its affordability, working together to ensure our communities of children and mothers and lactating women have equitable access to animal protein like pork is critical. You know, we as pork producers, I'm an Iowa farmer, I'm an Iowa pork producer, we're committed to producing that quality, safe pork because we are able here in the US to export nearly over a quarter of our production to over 100 countries, providing women and children across the globe with access to affordable protein. And we can do more. We can get pork to where it's needed most. Part of the key to that is our efforts in sustainability. It's a key part of the solution. Dr. Lal touched on that earlier today, and such phenomenal statements of soil health and soil regeneration, and pork production is a key part of that. If you asked a pork producer 15 years ago what sustainability means, it would probably draw a blank stare. We talked about productivity, efficiency, innovation, and doing more with fewer resources, and we've delivered on that promise as farmers. And so if you put just a couple numbers to that, You know, last year, US farmers produced nearly 30 billion pounds of pork from 130 market hogs. To get to that same amount of pork using 1990s technology, it would have required an additional 30 million pigs. That is doing more with less, and we are delivering on that promise. So we have an incredible story of sustainability to tell. We have a commitment to continue to do better. And back to the comments on soil health and regeneration, that's what that means. Over the past 50 years, we've reduced our carbon emissions by nearly 8%. We've used 76% less land and 25% less water. And that sustainability soil and that recycling soil is one that we are so proud of. Manure on our farms is not a waste. It goes back into the soil as a fertilizer, providing a closed loop system. So we're not bringing in additional outside sources of fertilizer. We're restoring our soil, and that's a proud fact that we have. You know, because of pork's high birthing rates, hogs provide that sustainable opportunity for families to be able to access those high protein, healthy meals while having a sustainable return on investment and a path to food security across the globe.
Great. Thanks, Jennifer. And there's certainly, it's wonderful to hear all those metrics about the concrete things that are being done, and to think about the way in which providing diverse proteins can also be about a path towards more sustainable production. I'm going to bring in AG here, and he's also done a lot of work on really diverse approaches to production in the US context. AG, you are an amazing urban farmer, a very creative reuser of lands and soils that might otherwise be lost in urban spaces, everything from underneath highways, as I understand it, to other facilities. Tell us a little bit about what you think that kind of creative production does to get nutrition into supply chains that actually get to people.
Sure. Thank you, Robin. And again, thank you very much for this wonderful opportunity to share some thoughts here about how do we actually end hunger and nutrition insecurity, not only in this country in the United States, but across the planet. And I'm a firm believer that actually the pandemic, if you can't recognize that this unprecedented disruption in the global food supply has actually opened our eyes to our strengths. Certainly it showed our weaknesses and vulnerabilities, but I think it's given us a chance to rethink what are we trying to accomplish? And as Sean mentioned, the public will and the political will to end hunger has to deal with, we can end it if we continue to maintain the capacity to have enough food. In other words, if we have abundance, then we can distribute it to everybody. If we have a world of scarcity, we have a different world, and we're going to be in deep, deep trouble. And so the idea that there's all kinds of new ways of looking at our food system and the resources we have in our own backyards. We've been doing edible landscapes and working directly with farm projects in our county for delivering food, custom grown food to the food bank. And we've been doing that for 30 years. We've been doing gleaning projects 30 years ago as well. So this idea of how do you address waste, how do you address nutrition insecurity, there's some solutions right now that have been ongoing for a long time. And this year we did realize that that's odd. For 25 years, we've been custom growing food bank at 3 to 4, 5, 6 acres a year, working with our Farm Bureau, working with our collaborations. And they want to make sure we understand that innovative collaborations is kind of the hallmark of where we are today in this 21st century. We can do a lot of things by thinking across the spectrum of our independent silos that have been ongoing, but by pulling ourselves together and saying, what is it that we're trying to accomplish? We can do a lot. This year, for example, we've decided, why are we growing 3 and 4 and 5 acres? Let's grow 40, 50, 60 acres. And some incredible thinkers at our local food bank have realized that they've got access to all kinds of resources. The farming community has access to all kinds of resources. The school districts have access to land. The water districts have a chance to provide water. And so we started to see that we can ramp up. For example, in our own county, we're going to grow and start harvest in just about 3 weeks and deliver about 40,000 pounds of food every week to the food bank of beautiful cabbage, broccoli, celery, some other products. And this partnership can be scaled and replicated all over the country and all over the world. And this idea of edible landscapes everywhere, so there's hunger nowhere, I know that sounds good, but it's actually very achievable. And I think what we're looking at then is that new thinking and new partners, these innovative collaborations can really deliver this idea that those most in need can get some of the very best food, the highest quality food. And this, let me finish by saying, we were complacent for many years thinking that end-of-life food products, rejected products, expired food products was going to be the main amount of food that would go through a food bank. And I think now we're realizing, because of programs like the farm to family food box deliveries, that some of the greatest products in the world can be delivered again to those most in need. And it's easily replicable with support from everybody. So we're excited about that. And this nutrient dense focus, instead of just food scarcity, but nutrition scarcity, is the right direction to kind of redirect our thinking about what it is we're trying to accomplish. And I thank all the members of the panel and especially the World Food Prize for being in this lane that lets us really accelerate what we're trying to accomplish and accomplish by the year 2030, these several pieces of the SDGs. Thank you so much.
AG, every time I hear from you, I'm more inspired by the work you do. And, you know, I think this potential to also link this to schools, not only for school feedings, but also school-based agricultural education, breeds a respect for the soils, breeds a respect for the food, as well as being part of that food security and education.
Can I mention one quick thing?
Sure.
There was a program in our state called the Garden in Every School, because we recognize that there's a school in every garden. And if the kids grow it, they will eat it. So this idea that kids don't like to eat vegetables, that's not true, but they'll eat it if they grow it. So I just wanted to add that. Thanks.
Great. Such inspiring thoughts. Turning to Gina, we have another person who has been a real leader about bringing youth into the agri-food sector. And Gina, we'd like to hear from the Mexican perspective a little bit about what dairy role can you as a dairy farmer play in helping to increase food affordability and availability and sustainability in the context of nutrition.
Oh, thank you, Robin. And just one note following AG's last comment about gardens in schools. I think it's a great initiative that can be replicated globally. And as other programs designed globally, but implement locally, aim small, miss small. And those kids that will grow some food in their schools are learning a lot. And they're learning about life, because here in this panel, having nutritionists and farmers like myself, and patients and Jen and AG, farmers take care of life. We're taking care of life of our livestock every day, the crops that we grow, the soil they grow it on, and other natural resources. So for those kids to learn how food is produced, they're learning a lot about life, because we're also taking care of the life of the people that eat the food that we produce. So thank you, AJ, for bringing such a great example to the table. And as from a dairy perspective, just as other animal proteins, milk is a nutrient powerhouse. It is wholesome and also affordable and always available. We work year-round to bring milk every day to as many houses as possible. We have 6 billion people consuming milk every day, or dairy products like cheese, butter, cream, even ice cream. And it's a powerhouse, nutrient dense, that will nourish especially young kiddies and especially women that are lactating or are pregnant, and older people that have special nutrient needs. So milk can be part of a healthy, balanced diet through all stages of life. It is also one of the least wasted foods in the world. And farmers like myself work very hard to make this as possible. We work very hard every day in our farms to make sure that we produce high quality milk that is safe for everybody to drink. And we work with processing plants, whether you're part of a co-op or social program like we have in Mexico. There is a state-owned company that has a double social function. It buys milk from local producers, takes it and processes it, and then it sells it to the wider population. It has around 12,000 selling points, which gives a lot of people in every corner of our country access to safe, affordable milk. And in my co-op, we work directly with the local government where we process our own milk, package it, and they distribute it, especially in schools, making it part of school meals. And then it also works with community diners so that low-income people can have access to a healthy meal that includes milk. It is proven that school meals and community diners where people go to have a meal, they're more likely to get more nutrients if they didn't have access to those prepared meals. And so dairy can be part of our diets in a very sustainable way. We have worked tirelessly, just like Jen has in the pork livestock sector. Dairy farmers have also worked tirelessly to work in a more sustainable way. Dairy emissions in the world have been reduced by 11% from in a 5-year period, and we're working to do even better. So milk is a powerhouse. Animal proteins, we need them in our diet, especially young kitties, to help them develop and achieve their best potential.
Fantastic, Gina, and great to hear about the role cooperatives can play in providing this double access and double role in the system. Next, I'm going to introduce one of the stars of our panel, and this is a powerhouse panel. Lawrence Haddad is known to many of you. He is the head of GAIN, and also, of course, was leading Action Track 1 through the Food System Summit. Lawrence has been a thought leader in this space and is a past World Food Prize laureate. Lawrence, we've heard from this extraordinary range of producers talking about everything from fish to vegetables, livestock. We heard about bread from Dr. Lal. What's the role for these diverse diets? How do we leverage some action to get people the nutritional needs they have to have?
Thank you, Robin. And I must just congratulate the World Food Prize Foundation. What a fantastic panel you've put together. It's really, really impressive. And I'm really learning a lot from listening to everyone. To create diverse diets, you have to look at the whole food system. And what's at the core of the food system in any country is the private sector. And I'm not talking, when we talk about the private sector, I'm not talking about some big monolith here. When I talk about the private sector, I break it down into 8 blocks. I like tables. Those of you who know me know I like tables. So think of a table with 2 columns and 4 rows. The 2 columns are food companies and non-food companies. And remember, there are lots of non-food companies that are absolutely vital for the food system in transport, refrigeration, marketing, advertising, finance, you name it. Then think about the 4 rows, which are large multinational corporations, which many of us think of as the private sector. But there's also large national corporations, small and medium corporations. So think of the private sector in that 8-cell grid. I'm going to talk really about small and medium enterprises in food and non-food. Why? Because in the countries that GAIN works in sub-Saharan Africa and South and Southeast Asia, small and medium enterprises are the businesses that are responsible for delivering 70% of all food consumed in those countries. And for the lower income, more vulnerable populations, more vulnerable to malnutrition and other sorts of vulnerabilities, it's even more than 70%. So what do SMEs, small and medium enterprises, need to be able to do more for nutrition? Well, first of all, they need 3 things. They need the right policy environment. They need governments who are going to reward them for doing the right thing and punish their competitors for doing the wrong thing. So governments have a large array of tools in their policy toolbox. They can do all sorts of things in the fiscal space. They can subsidize the production and consumption of certain foods, and they can tax those foods that are not healthy or are generating large environmental negatives. They have trade policy, which they can, again, calibrate to promote the supply of safe and nutritious food. They have food safety standards that often don't apply to informal wet markets, which create opportunities for companies and small and medium enterprises that are less scrupulous about food safety. There are fortification standards that need to be adhered to. So governments have a big role in creating not just a level playing field to business, but a playing field that's uplifting. And one example of documenting this is something that GAIN has been doing with the Sun Business Network called IBANI, which is an index that helps governments understand how they are enabling businesses to accelerate nutrition. The second thing they need is network support. Businesses, it's hard being an entrepreneur. It's a lonely job. It's a tough job. Everything is on the line. For those of us who are not entrepreneurs, we can make a mistake and we're probably not going to lose our job. But if entrepreneurs make a big enough mistake, they will severely damage their livelihoods. So they need support. They need a community of practice. They need to share risk. They need to learn from each other. They need a mechanism that's going to give them a voice, a collective voice. And again, the Sun Business Network is a really good example of that. The third thing they need is finance. Most of the small and medium enterprises are too big for microfinance, sort of the $50 loans, the $30 loans, and they're too small for formal finance. Formal banking system won't take risks on these companies, so they need innovative finance. And again, GAIN and others are have developed a nutritious food financing facility. We call it N3F, which is an impact investing mechanism to get funds, loans and equity to small and medium enterprises that are supplying nutritious food. We've got them in climate, we've got them in livelihoods, we've even got them in gender, but we don't have them in nutrition. One final point, Robin, for this to happen, for these kinds of innovations to happen, the public sector donors really need to innovate. Now, USAID, the Dutch government and the Irish government are there, but many other public sector donors are not there. They think that catalyzing private sector, de-risking the private sector is kind of money down the drain because they might not get that money back. But what they get back is 10 times the amount of that money from the private sector. And that's the thing that's going to generate the massive impact. Back to you, Robin.
Thank you, Lawrence, for really highlighting the power of how to expand and exponentially grow the interventions, because we have a panel full of SMEs in many cases, many eminent academics, but also many people who are exactly the examples that you were talking about, who have that power to multiply. Speaking to this funding question, Naoko, could you come in and talk a little bit about what you think needs to be done around some of these funding questions for nutrition?
Thank you very much. I would like to continue some kind of discussion Lawrence has already done, but I would like to point out 3 points. One is efficiency of using resources, especially financing resources, and also as a role of public sector. So food system is a complex and multidimensional. So we need to identify the action that's a multiple need, so-called double or even triple duty action. For example, like a public financing for meals in school, hospital, or canteens can help promote a healthy, sustainable diet, but support local, small-scale producer. Likewise, taxation on unhealthy food system like high sugar and salt can improve diet of population, but more resources will bring more resources to government. Also benefit the producer of vegetable and fishes and the more healthy diet producers. So, for example, like a financing or facilitating clean water and hygiene in local market can work for the trade of fruits and fish and could support small, medium enterprises and take positive role for the nutrition. Second point is innovative resources, innovative resource mobilization, especially for vulnerable people, including children. So a couple of examples, but for example, definitely we need more resources to the people. So for example, matching fund between money from local national money and international fund to improve access to healthy food for vulnerable population. Maybe it is one example. Final point, as I would like to talk about investment in human resources. Health professional, veterinarian, or leader of the farmers, or fisheries, or producers and processors. That's crucial. They have a crucial role, but the most importantly, empowerment of the community and the consumer is a key, I think. Let me stop here. Thank you.
Thank you, Naoko. Absolutely the need to fund into all of these things. So you talked also about the private sector. Jennifer, as one of the private sector representatives on this panel, what do you think private sector needs to do to innovate more, to invest in nutrition?
Yeah, I'd like to reflect for a minute on Dr. Borlaug. He was raised in Cresco, Iowa, a small farming community up in Northwest Iowa. We're very familiar with that community, and I know many, many farmers throughout Cresco and Howard County. You know, as someone who's a pork producer, a mother, I was also raised on a crop and livestock farm in a similar small farming community. We take great pride in our fellow Iowan. In fact, we use his words on our farms all the time because they hold so true as we're breeding and weaning pigs. We say there are no miracles in pork production. There are no miracles in production agriculture. But, you know, as pig farmers, we push forward every day in a unified and noble mission to care for the animals that feed a hungry world. And a growing world in need of animal protein, and we rise to that challenge. And we're committed to producing more nutrient-rich pork with less resources. And so I know the private sector. I'm a part of the private sector. Our farmers, our packers, our processors, our retailers, we are all committed to ending food insecurity. In fact, Iowa Select Farms alone will give back over $2 million this year in pork to our local food banks, our community shelters, our women's shelters, our children's shelters, and at-risk children in our schools. And as an industry, we're currently working on collecting industry-wide metrics of our giving so we can have goals and get better in this area. So this commitment is so strong throughout our entire food chain. We know it's the right thing to do as farmers and as global citizens. And we're committed to doing even more to advance the efforts of ending food security.
Thank you, Jen. And it's great to know that you're making that extra investment into food banks. We've heard a lot about school feeding, about food banks, about the way that we can fuel these systems right from the production side. And it was also great to hear you mention the fact that many of these farms, you know, you might be talking about pork, but that you grew up on a mixed farm. Many farmers, including those on this panel, are growing a diversity of products. So it's that diversity needs to be reflected in the plates that we're dealing with. As we begin to approach the end of our time together, I'm hoping to come back to each panelist and really hone in on a call to action. We heard today clearly about the fact that all of this begins at a planetary level with our soils, with our oceans, and treating them respectfully. And that we have a One Health approach if we want the outcomes we want, which starts right from our soils and oceans and goes all the way to the health of the people who are being fed. And creating more systems around that is really clear. We also heard from our producers about the ways in which they can be engaged in processes that lead more directly to nutritional outcomes. And I think one thing that we also heard touched upon several times is the importance of child and maternal health. And as we go through our concluding remarks, I'm actually going to call on Sean and Naoko first to just come back to some of that framing about that importance. Sean, if you were to make a call to action, one single call to action in 1 minute, because we don't have much time to get through this eminent panel, what's the thing we most need to do on nutrition?
Thanks so much, Robin. Actually, I was very struck by Patience's remark about we have a huge number of tools. The crisis of malnutrition because of the pandemic, we risk to lose a decade of progress. If we permit maternal and child nutrition to continue, we're undermining the future of our society. We have a huge number of tools, and it's not that everybody needs to deploy every tool everywhere, but every institution should look in that toolkit, which are the ones I can advance. And with the Nutrition for Growth Summit coming up December 7th and 8th, this is our big moment for nutrition, that institutions across the globe commit to concrete actions, the financial and policy commitments. So my one call to action is to take this Nutrition for Growth Summit as a huge opportunity to commit to what each one of us can do to accelerate progress on eliminating maternal and child malnutrition. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sean, and you were super respectful of the time. Let me just come back to you and ask you a little bit more about the Nutrition for Growth Summit for one moment, because you've got the banner behind your head on the screen. Tell us a little bit more about when it's happening and how people can get more engaged.
Right. So you can go online and just look at Nutrition for Growth. This is the big replenishment moment for the nutrition community, recognizing it's a horrendously under-resourced sector. And as of starting in 2013, it's been a global effort to try to increase both investment in and political commitment to nutrition action across the health system, the food system, and in settings of fragile settings and humanitarian settings. And so there's a place for everybody there. It's being organized this year by the government of Japan in Tokyo. It'll be an all virtual event. The registration forms are up. The accountability framework is up. And it's for our partner governments, donor governments, private sector, civil society organizations, UN organizations, really everyone to come together to say, this is what I can do for nutrition. I commit to do it, and I commit it in this time frame.
Brilliant. Now, one of those things we probably want to commit to is child and maternal health. Naoko, we've heard several references to it. Do you want to just bring home, before you move into your call to action, some of the scope of that challenge?
Thank you. So my closing, as I would say a lot of, but I'm closing remarks say that we have to truly people-centered. So which means that we need more focus on vulnerable population and health equity. That is, I would say that. But also, I'm not talking about the current generation. We need to think about the future generation. So people should be included, the future generation. And that is why we need to focus on the vulnerability and fragility of our planet and ecosystem. We heard a lot about this during this session. So food should not be cause of diseases, or food production should not run burden of emerging infectious diseases. That is why today's dialogue with multi-sectors, the cooperation is crucial. And for our UN agency, UN Nutrition, we will monitor and create the data, share reality for all people to move ahead, to work together. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Naoko. Let's turn now to some of those producers we were hearing from. Patients, you obviously left a mark with your comments about indigenous foods and about getting products right on the ground. Nigeria is amongst the countries that's been facing some real challenges on its food security. Let's hear from you. What do you think we need to do most to really make a difference?
Thank you, Robin. I think that for me, there's urgency. There's a need to truly get boots on the ground and move from talk to action. So for me, what I would say is let's go forward from all of these conversations, the UNFSS, all of it, right? Let us use everything that is available. We were able to develop a vaccine in less than 1 year. We can deploy tools to make sure that we can improve production, and we can also improve crop to be able to improve nutrition. Food security is intertwined with nutrition security. If we can get our food production up in countries where people cannot afford good nutrition, improve production of food, find all the tools that are available. There's no silver bullet, no one size fits all. Tailor each solution to each country, and let's get the solutions out there and get more people eating nutritious foods. Thank you.
Thank you for that energetic call to action and bringing it back to the country level, right? To get that context considered is so important. Gina, how about you? What's the call to action?
Have two that link together. Aim small, miss small. Tailoring every solution to not only country level, but very local level. Because, for example, in Mexico, not the northern part of Mexico, which is very dry. It's completely different from the south. That it's very humid. You have tropical forests. And you go to central Mexico, and even the central part of Mexico, there's highlands, there's lower parts. So aim small, miss small. And the second one is we're talking about health and life, and food production is our health services. So in Norman Borlaug's words, take it to a farmer, because farmers are key to produce that safe, affordable, and nutritious food that will nourish all of our lives. And to do so, farmers need access to technology, information, and finance.
Fantastic, Jennifer. And didn't they do an amazing job at the foundation pulling together a panel like this and including farmers? It's so rare to have a nutrition panel and see farmers represented. So love that point. Jennifer.
Yeah, I would just really echo what Gina just said here as my fellow dairy farmer. Again, over the past 50 years, pig farms have knocked it out of the park when it comes to reducing carbon emissions, less land use, less water use, doing more, producing more affordable, nutrient-rich protein with less, while being sustainable. So we will continue to do that. We're going to get better. We're not done. We're going to keep moving forward. We're going to build those metrics of giving back, our donations, our commitment to ending food insecurity across our rural communities and across the globe. And I think you'll see big things from pork producers in the future. Our commitment is strong. We're committed to being responsible producers, and we're committed to doing more with less.
Thanks so much, Jennifer, and thank you for thinking concretely about having metrics and actionable items. AG, you are talking about the diversity of diets so effectively. How do we get production to reflect that diversity of diet better? What's your call to action?
Well, I would just like to echo what Patience said, is that whether you're farmers, ranchers, fishermen, we're all part of the solution set here. And whether you're big or small, everybody has the role, as Gina mentioned, small, big, everybody can suddenly start to focus on the goal of this urgency of ending hunger in our time. And ending hunger means also ending this nutrition insecurity. And the urgency is every day that goes by that we don't do that, someone is being stunted, some young person is stunted, some life is being ruined, some mind is not being developed. And we're just kind of, how is it possible in 2021 that we haven't accomplished this very simple goal of feeding everybody on our planet? And as difficult as it seems it might be, it's not. It goes back to the will to make it happen, because we certainly have the capacity to do it. And so reinvigorating a landscape. And so whether it's getting a large producer to suddenly realize he can dedicate a certain amount of his products into a food bank system, or whether you produce the food directly for the food bank, whether you activate the FFA chapters all around the country and have them start to grow food for the schools or for their own school or for the local food banks, whether you realize that an abandoned property or vacant lot is a landscape that is just waiting to be invigorated with a new collaborative, innovative strategy. And so I think the call to action is this: no more think tanks. We've been thinking about how to end hunger on this planet for a long time. Let's just get a do tank attitude together, and region by region, area by area, which area is going to raise their hand and say, well, we don't have nutrition insecurity in this state or in this region or in this country. And I think that's how we start to accomplish it, because when someone does it, I think everybody will be starting to move towards that direction that, well, if they can do it, we can do it too. And that goes back to scalability and the replication of all the positive things that are already being done, that are proof of concepts, that this is not inventing something new. This is just realigning what it is we want to get accomplished. So thanks again for this, bringing producers to this discussion, because they are the solution.
They are, and we need every one of these, all of these different types of producers in all these different places to get that food onto people's tables. Let's pivot now to our three eminent laureates sitting on this panel. Shakuntala, first of all, again, congratulations from all of us on the panel for your win. We're also very proud of you, and it's so thoughtful of the foundation to think about including blue foods in this prize founded by Dr. Borlaug, founded on the land, but that it includes the whole of the food system, and someone with your nutrition background. We have a couple of moments. We'd really like to hear from you about what you think the call to action should be.
Thank you, Robin. If I go back to the UN Food System Summit, we've had 2 years of deliberations, dialogues. And within those 2 years, we've also put together the evidence on aquatic foods. And we do know that there can be no transformation of food systems, food, land, and water systems without the inclusion of diverse, nutritious aquatic foods, which are superfoods. So I would call for this action. And there are multiple benefits, as I said, of this within the food systems. And if we would look at the commitments and the investments we need for research, innovations, I'll give one example. We do know that these foods come in as superfoods with multiple micronutrients and essential fatty acids, but as yet, no one has looked at the science and the evidence for the bioavailability of and absorption of micronutrients on the plate and the roles that diverse aquatic foods play in increasing this absorption. Think, for example, with plant-source foods, if you can increase the minerals and the vitamins in plant-source foods, which make up the large part of the plate, and perhaps double this absorption, we are going to get at a much greater stage of nourishing our nations, nourishing our people. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I think that is something we heard several times across the range of this panel, is we heard those references not just to the diversity of diet in all the different types of food we've talked about from amongst the different producers, but we heard those words micronutrients several times, and you really introduced that point about bioabsorption. I know, Dr. Lal, that there have been some extraordinary efforts to look at the role soils play, for instance, in zinc uptake as a micronutrient example, and zinc's so critical to the health and well-being of and the development of human beings. You can't really make up that zinc deficiency, as I understand it, if you don't get it early in life. And we know that soils are a central part of that. And we know that aquatic foods are probably an essential part of the bioabsorption of that. What's your call to action, Dr. Lal?
Thank you so much. I first want to really congratulate Shakuntala again for her role in blue food. And I'll come back to that in a moment. I have 6 specific calls for action. Number 1, we have a Clean Water Act. We have a Clean Air Act. You can never have clean water and air unless you have a healthy soil. It's a time for a healthy soil act in the Farm Bill 2023. I hope it will happen. US will set an example for the rest of the world. Second call for action is very close cooperation between private sector, academic community, policymakers, and the farmers and ranchers, especially so in developing countries. Whether it's machinery, whether it's fertilizer, whether it's crop variety, private sector have to play a major role. Many times we talk about payment to farmer for ecosystem services. It may never happen from the government. It may only happen from the private sector. I cannot overemphasize the importance of it. Number 3, education. Education about health, nutrition, where the food comes from, what are the environment, soil, air, water component to children from the primary school onward. Right from the very beginning, our curricula need to be changed in favor of the One Health concept, in favor of the importance of natural resources. Empowering farmers, especially the women farmers, empowering them through payment for ecosystem services, providing them the facilities that they need to remove the drudgery from agriculture profession. I can never forget babies tied on the back and women bent down, weeding, making heaps. Somehow agriculture profession have to be respectable and given dignity by removing drudgery and empowering the farmers, especially the women farmers. COVID-19 has taught us to strengthen the local food system. Very important. That may bring me back to urban agriculture. That may bring me back to aquaculture by recycling water coming into the cities, wastewater, producing local food. 15 to 20% of the food eaten within the mega cities to be produced within the cities by recycling. And finally, let us think about soil-less agriculture. Soil has many other uses beyond agriculture. I cannot even count them. In 2100, rather than 95% of the food coming from soil, probably no more than 50%. Soil-less agriculture, that meant blue food will probably become more important. And while I'm talking about the blue food and soil-less, I must also mention that blue carbon in oceanic and coastal ecosystem plays a pivotal role in moderating the global carbon cycle. And the coastal ecosystems, their health is directly linked to what is done in the uplands. That is where the pesticide, herbicide, sediments, nutrients, that's where the anoxia and hypoxia come in. And that all require call for action amongst the member nations of the United Nations. We make slogans, but the time is now. Thank you.
The time is now. Dr. Lal, there's a reason why you received the World Food Prize for your passionate work on soils. Now, on to our last laureate on this panel, Lawrence Haddad. Please bring us home. Tell us what we need to do to make nutrition a reality.
Thank you, Robin. It's hard to go after so many amazing speakers. Thank you for giving me the opportunity. So first point, creating nutritious food systems, and that's the title of this panel. It's not an easy win. Dr. Lal and Dr. Tilstead said we have to start with creating healthy soils, healthy oceans, rivers, lakes. We have to go through healthy animals, healthy business models, and healthy, all the way through to healthy gut flora. So it's not easy to do. We've got to do all of those things. We've got to align everything. AG said it's about alignment. We need to align all of those actions. But, you know, enduring fundamental change doesn't happen through easy wins. It happens through transformative change. And if we can make food systems become more nutritious, that will be very transformative. Why do we need transformation? We need transformation because some of the statistics that have been shared here. Sean reminded us 3 billion people can't afford a healthy diet. 80% of kids under the age of 5 don't even have a minimally acceptable diet. These are just outrageous numbers. These are indefensible statistics. They are, well, they're indefensible, they're unacceptable, and they're outrageous. So we have to somehow channel this outrage. And this is where Patricia and Gina and AG, and Jen, very practical suggestions. Let's get from talking to action. And actually, each of us can play a role, no matter how big, medium, or small we are. So to achieve that transformation, we all have to change. We all have to change our mindsets, our partners, our business models, our organograms, how we organize ourselves, our research, our metrics, and of course, the action and critically, the investments. We must, I'm a big believer in that there's enough resources in the system. They're just not aligned properly. The incentives are all wrong, and we get the outcomes our incentives design. We need to change the incentives, align the actions. And we need to do this, Robin, this is my last point. We need to do this because our bosses, who are our bosses? Those who are malnourished and those who are at risk of malnutrition, they deserve nothing less. Conflict, climate, and COVID are conspiring against them and against us. And we must not fail them. As Sean said, the next test is nutrition for growth. Nelko also said this, nutrition for growth in 6 weeks' time. Let's rise to the occasion, colleagues. Everyone listening, people you know, they need to all rise to the occasion and make powerful commitments for the present, but critically also for the future. Thanks. Back to you, Robin.
Thank you so much, Lawrence. We're at time and we couldn't have had a better wrap-up call to action. 6 weeks to go till Nutrition for Growth. We need to fund small, focused, diverse, healthy diets. Thank you to this eminent panel. Congratulations to Shakuntala as our new laureate. Many thanks to Barbara Stinson and the team at the World Food Prize Foundation. It's been an extraordinary discussion of nutrition, and it flows perfectly into international cooperation in the roundtable ahead. Thank you all.